What is up guys, Joe here, welcome back to my channel, and today I am here alongside my good pal Blackwar. How are you today?
Hello, and I'm very fine after this wonderful day of the Giro.
Wonderful day of the Giro indeed, and of course we did have the final time trial into Milan today at 15.7 kilometers, and we had an unprecedented situation really coming into the stage with Tao Geoghegan Hart and Jai Hindley starting on an equal time after the stage 2 Sestriere yesterday. These two, clearly the strongest riders after the Stelvio and Sestriere, coming in on the same time, and really, as expected of the two riders, it was Tao Geoghegan Hart with a dominant performance in comparison to Hindley in the TT, winning by 39 seconds and winning the Giro d'Italia with Wilco Kelderman 1 minute and 29 down on Geoghegan Hart. Blackwar, what's your initial reaction?
I can't get my head wrapped around the fact that Tao Geoghegan Hart is a Grand Tour winner. But I mean, he's shown true battleship throughout the Giro. I don't think Ineos expected to end up in Di Maria Rosa after stage 3, which seemed like ages ago. But Tao came into the time trial as the favorite compared to Jay Hindley, and the odds were respected. And yeah, he's a well-deserved Maglia Rosa.
Well deserved Maglia Rosa, I would agree, and it's just incredible how from Mount Etna, where obviously Geraint Thomas dropped out of the Giro, and Tao Geoghegan Hart lost over 2 minutes to most of the other GC guys. From that situation, if anyone suggested he had even a chance of winning the Giro, I think many people would have said you're crazy. So the turnaround from Ineos has been incredible. And adding to that, Pippo Ganna won his 4th stage of the race and 3rd time trial, making it 7 in total for the team. So 7 stage wins for the Ineos Grenadiers and the GC win as well. Can you remember a better team performance at a Grand Tour?
I don't think I can. And it's impressive because it's not even the strongest lineup Ineos could have had. Like, let's be honest, they could have had a much better lineup. They have so much depth in their team. I think when they came into the race, let's be honest, I think 3 wins were already like sealed. Everyone probably expected either Ghana or Dennis to win the time trials. But 7 wins, a GC, the best young rider. I can't really remember a GC that went that well for a team, especially a team that lost its leader in the 3rd stage.
Exactly. It's just incredible. And obviously, we've seen dominant performances by Ineos and Team Sky in the past, but this one was different because their main GC favourite, and really the favourite I think for the race, Geraint Thomas, dropped out early, as we know. And in a way, that kind of freed up the rest of the team. We saw Jumbo-Visma riding at the Tour with the likes of Van Aert kind of strictly riding for Roglic pretty much throughout the race and only being allowed to go off in a sprint now and again. And Geraint Thomas dropping out of the race freed up Ganna, freed up Dennis, freed up all of the team, including Geoghegan Hart. And it really kind of played into their favour clearly in the end. Do you think this Grand Tour could really change the way Ineos and even other teams as well approach these big races?
I honestly wish, but I don't see it happening because let's be honest, had the starters been bigger, I don't think Tao would have been able to win this Giro. But it was nice not to see a dominant team just pacing for an entirety of the climb and just having a lead out man for the leader of the team for the final 500 meters, like we've seen on the tour with Roglic, and like we've seen at the start of the Vuelta as well with Roglic. It was nice, and you said Geraint dropping out allowed the Ineos riders to be a bit more free, and that was entirely true. You've seen Ben Swift every time in the breakaway, Luke Rowe, Jonathan Narvaez also taking a stage win, because we've talked about Ghana and Geoghegan Hart. I completely had forgotten that Jonathan Narvaez had gotten a win, but it allowed them to show all of their strength, and it showed that it's not a team that's just good when they make a train. It's also a team that knows how to race, and I wish it propels a change in how GC are being ridden. But I don't see the trend changing, especially with armadas such as Yombo or Ineos.
Yeah, it's a fair point. It's a very fair point. And adding to that, we obviously had Ganna take 4 stages. Rowan Dennis didn't win a stage at this race, but in the final mountain stages, we saw some just incredible performances by the Australian. What do you see these guys doing in the future? Do you see, obviously Dennis spoke about trying to go for GCs in the past. It didn't quite work for him. He had a good performance at the Tour de Suisse. I think he came second to Bernal a year or two ago. Ganna is a bit younger. Do you think we could see either of these guys going for GC races, either in 1 week races or even Grand Tours?
The thing is, Ineos team has a GT pedigree. I think if you want to transition from a time trialist to a Grand Tour rider with Ineos, you can. Ganna reminds me a lot of Tom Dumoulin in his early years, and Tom had been had appeared on the scene, I think on a Vuelta where he nearly won, and then he completely bottled it in the final week. But I could definitely see Ganna trying to go for a GT. If he's gonna be able to do it, that's another question. But he could definitely be a future contender. And you've talked about Dennis. What a ride! What a ride by Ron Dennis. We've talked about it when we did the podcast after the Stelvio stage, but yesterday as well, he was just so good, so good. I remember him being dropped after the first attack of Jay Hindley, 2.5k to go, and he just came back at his own pace and he kept on leading the group. The dedication of this man is probably one of the reasons as to why Tao is today in the Maria Rosa.
100%. I think without Rowan Dennis being at this race, I'm not sure how it would have played out, but it obviously would have made it much more difficult for Tao to win this race because he made the difference on the Stelvio and then in Sestriere as well. I mean, to drop everyone bar Tao and Jai Hindley is just an incredible ride. So, I don't know, thinking about it, if Dennis can put performances like that together over a week and then even 3 weeks, I don't know. I think he has the potential to try at least go for GC in the 1 week races and even Grand Tours. I'd love to see him try it again. Maybe I'm being a bit kind of biased, recency biased, because he's just done these crazy performances, but they were just incredible. And knowing his time trial and pedigree as well, he'd be unstoppable. He'd just be unstoppable.
No, fully. I think the main issue he'd have with going for a GC, whether it's on a 1 week race or a Grand Tour, is that the fact that he's riding for Ineos. And I don't really see him having the opportunity of being a sole leader on a race. But should he be on a race where the main leader of the team has an issue, then he definitely could take the win, for example, on the Tour de Suisse, where he did finish second in 2019, but also a Tour Down Under on his roads, or that 1 week race, which also has 2 times a Tirreno. Tirreno could genuinely suit him very well, but Ganna could also be suited very well to a Giro. The two riders complement each other very well. They're both very decent time trialists, and they can both climb. Add that, I think Castroviero is also here for Ineos. They have 3 riders able to basically do it all, and it is key for a team to have that kind of rider on a Grand Tour squad.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see with both Ganna and Dennis how their kind of careers progress from here. They could obviously both concentrate, particularly Ganna, on just staying focused on the time trial discipline because he is just so dominant in that discipline, of course. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. Now, coming back to Tao, he really has burst onto the scene, obviously, at this race. Looking at his palmarès, he won a stage at the Tour of the Alps. He came second at the Tour of the Alps. He came 5th at the Tour of Poland. They're some of his biggest results, apart from now winning the Giro d'Italia. He's 25 years old, and he rides for Ineos, who are absolutely stacked with Grand Tour talent, as we know. How do you see him kind of kicking on from this? Do you see him really developing into a leader now for the team, or with signings like Adam Yates, Geraint Thomas coming back as well? Is he kind of going to be forced more into a domestique, super domestique role? How do you see him kind of developing and performing next season?
I don't know. I've been trying to think about it. You've mentioned the Tour of Poland, where I think he finished like fifth of the GC, but let's not forget he finished fifth as a teammate because I think Sivakov wins that year, and we had seen as well Sivakov and him on the Giro, I think last year. Both of them had a tough time. I think Sivakov ended in like bottom of the top 10, and Teo didn't really show a lot. And I think people kind of like decided to see Pavel as the the upcoming leader, and Tao wouldn't be that rider. But with Tao winning the Giro today, every card is like shuffled because they have so many riders able to win a Grand Tour. It's going to be genuinely a battle to see like who's going to be like the leader. They can enter a Grand Tour with three riders able to win, and the question is who will be the leader decided by the team.
Exactly. And I think it's going to be difficult for them, because they have just so much talent, as you say. It's going to be difficult to keep them all, for starters, happy and also to keep them all in the team. If Teo isn't given these leadership roles and other riders aren't given these leadership roles, surely they're not all going to stick around. I know obviously the money thing comes into play, but Teo has to be given more leadership opportunities going forward from here. And so many other Ineos riders kind of, I think, now deserve the same opportunities. So I see it being quite difficult for them going forward, to be honest.
I fully agree. I fully agree. The thing is, before this Giro, Teo couldn't vouch for a leader position because he hadn't shown anything um, worthy, technically, of being a Grand Tour leader. But now he's like, yeah, I've won the Giro. Like, I am a Grand Tour winner, so I want to have a shot on another GC. And Ineos can't really say like, well, yes, but actually no. So it's gonna be tough. The thing I'm trying to think of a team that could like snatch him from Ineos, but I don't see where he'd go. There was, I think, at one point a rumor of a British team entering cycling in 2021, I think, and potentially he could go to like a newly established team that could have him as their new the new face of a team. Um, but I think he's also very well in the Ineos team. He fits very well in the squad.
He does, yeah. And I know he's a massive fan of the team as well. Back in, I think, the 2010s, 2011, 2012, when we had, of course, the likes of Bradley Wiggins riding for the team. I know he kind of idolised Bradley Wiggins and he really looked to ride for Sky. That was what he kind of dreamed of at that time. So it's hard to see him really looking to force a move away. But at the same time, he's going to have to demand these leadership positions.
Of course, and it's a great success story. You've mentioned him being a fan of Bradley Wiggins, but let's not forget that in 2011, which is like 9 years ago, I think there was no British Grand Tour winner. Since then, there's been five different winners. Uh, I can't count the amount of Grand Tours that they've won, but I know it's a staggering amount. And Ineos is a huge part of that British pedigree to win Grand Tours, and I think I don't see Teo leaving them because I mean it's the team of his heart. He's been there since 2015, I believe. Or no, he was a trainee in 2015, I think, with Sky. But the team Sky saw him grow into the GC rider he is now, and it's just great to see him starting from the bottom and now he's there.
Yeah, completely agree. The team of his heart, quite nicely put by you there. But anyhow, we'll come to Team Sunweb, second and thirds at the race. Jai Hindley, of course, so close. He wore pink coming into this stage for the first time at the race. They had their team leader, really, in Wilco Kelderman in pink the day before in Sestriere. He lost it, as well as losing time on the Stelvio. It's the first time, I believe, that a team have finished second and third at Grand Tour since the Tour de France in 2015, where, of course, Movistar managed it. How differently do you think Sunweb could have played it? Because it's always difficult when you have two riders on the podium, but one of them isn't on the top step.
Yeah, and I think people are going to talk about that stage 18, that stage with the Stelvio. I think it's going to be the big talking point. It's going to be whether it was the smart move to let Jay in the front and not wait for Wilco. Um, I mean, we had talked about it previously, but we had both agreed that it was the correct call. I'm trying to think, but I think you're correct in saying that the last podium with two riders from the same team without being on the top step was 2015. Actually, I thought first about the Schleck brothers in 2011, and I know the two of them had been like happy to be on second and third. I think the situation today at Sunweb is extremely different. I don't think this. I don't think they're being. They're not happy. I think with what happened. Wilco, I'm pretty sure he's not. Let's be honest. Wilco, basically a very similar situation with Teo actually, because sure, Wilco's moving next year, but he's moving to Yombo. And had he moved to Yombo as the winner of the Giro, his status in the team could have been much, much more different. I think Jay can't really complain about anything. Like he's second, starting or coming into this Giro. I think if you had told him he'd be second of the Giro, and he had been well, he would have been wearing the Maglia Rosa, I think he would have signed. Uh, Probably the same with Wilco. Tell him he finishes third, knowing his history on Grand Tours, he probably would have signed as well. But seeing how the race developed, I don't think he's going to be particularly happy with the podium. But at the end of the day, I think Tao was the strongest, and Wilco had 2 days off. Sadly, that was not when he needed them.
Yeah, 100%. Wilco looked great in the first 2 weeks. He really did in all of the climbs. I think Mount Etna as well. He gained time on pretty much everyone else in the GC. Obviously, that was early in the race. Just couldn't quite see that form through, could he? He really did look good though. And Hindley, definitely one of, obviously alongside Geoghegan Hart, one of the revelations of the race. He's had some fairly big results before now, but nothing close to this. And I think he's 24, the same age as, or I think he's slightly younger actually than Geoghegan Hart. He is really Australia's best, clearly their best talent now in Grand Tours, and going forward with Richie Port aging, he seems to be Australia's real kind of force in Grand Tours, I would suggest.
I mean, we say that, and Australia has had two podiums on Grand Tours this year. I don't think anyone could have seen that coming. Like, I don't think anyone had Richie Port on the Tour de France podium. I think to have Jay Hindley on your Giro podium at the start would have been genuinely witchcraft. But I mean, we say that they have Jack Haig, who's not bad. They have the Hamilton. I think they're brothers, Lucas and Chris. They've got some very, very decent prospects. But it's definitely a very nice thing for Jay and Australia to be on the podium of the Giro. However, let's not forget that Richie burst onto the scene around this age and never really did anything, well, results wise at least, until 2020, which was like 10 years after the time he burst onto the scene. So I wouldn't get carried away, but it's a very nice showing from Jay, who you said didn't have a lot of palmarès before that. He actually finished second of the 2019 Tour of Poland, ahead of Tao Geoghegan Hart. So
Yeah.
it's a revenge from Tao on the big scene today.
Certainly is. And going back to their tactics, on the Stelvio, I agree, the massive talking point was Hindley staying with the Ineos guys rather than waiting for Kelderman. And I agreed with you that it was the right decision. I still think that was the correct decision. Do you think they could have played it any differently from that moment onwards? Do you think Hindley could have tried an attack on that stage now, looking back? Because obviously we couldn't have foreseen the Kelderman time loss, but it would have definitely been difficult for Hindley to, as we know, finish ahead of Geoghegan Hart in the time trial. He had to try and take time in the mountains somehow. Couldn't do it in Sestriere. Do you think they'll regret not allowing him that attack or chance to attack?
I mean, now we've got all the elements. We've seen everything. It would have been this. Would it have been? Yeah, it would have been the smartest decision, I think, to attack with Jay. But at the time, like you couldn't have known that Wilco would lose time on Sestriere, and also, as much as Jay was strong on the Stelvio and on that stage on the Lago di Cancano, I think he was also stronger than Tao. I don't think he would have been able to put 40 seconds on Tao. So he was riding the GC, but I mean he would have lost it in my opinion. And also it was nice for the script to have two riders in the same time. Like there was 84 cents, sorry, between the two of them starting the time trial, and it was absolutely great. I think Jay probably knew in his head that he was going to lose the GC, but I don't think Sunweb could have done any different, especially knowing that Teo lost like a minute or close to like a minute on the first time trial because he didn't start at the correct time. Had Teo started the same time as like Wilco or Geraint Thomas, the GC would have been sealed already.
Yeah, and Teo obviously losing time that time trial, then Mount Etna, just shows how strong he's been in this final week to gain all of that time back and more on everyone else. The likes of Nibali, Fulzan going for GC from the beginning. Just an incredible ride by Teo. And trying to think about it, Hindley could have attacked Geoghegan Hart on the Stelvio stage. Let's say he did manage to drop Geoghegan Hart. He gained 20 seconds on him. He still doesn't win the GC. I think that's clear. He still doesn't win it. And you're also putting potentially Kelderman further back because you're kind of pushing the tempo even more. So maybe you push Kelderman further away from Geoghegan Hart as well. So I think in the end, the strongest riders come out on top. Sunweb couldn't really have done too much differently. I think they pretty much played it tactically as best they could. I would say just Geoghegan Hart, too strong for them.
Yeah, it's the issue when you have two leaders. I think Tao Geoghegan Hart is Jay Hindley and Wilco combined. Tao had the strength of Jay in the mountain stages, and he had the time trialing ability of Wilco because I think they finished in a very similar time today. I think Wilco might edge him by like 2-3 seconds.
Yeah.
But yeah, you've talked about the crucial points. Had Jay attacked in the Stelvio or in the Lago di Cancano, he would have ruined any hopes of Wilco winning the Giro. And at that time, technically speaking, Wilco was still the leader of the team. And I mean, that's what we mentioned. We said that Jay couldn't have attacked because he would have killed Wilco's hopes. I think it also would have killed Sunweb's hopes of winning the GC.
Yeah, it's a very fair point. So Geoghegan Hart wins it ahead of Hindley and Kelderman. In fourth place, we did have a change of position today. Pello Bilbao dropped back from 4th to 5th, whilst Joao Almeida did gain that 4th place. Of course, he was in the pink jersey for 15 stages at this race. A brilliant just race for Portugal in general as well, with Giro taking the Maglia Azzurra too. What have you got to say on Joao Almeida? Because he's just had an incredible race, just 22 years old.
I mean, I think I sang his praises already when we talked about the stage where he lost the Giro. Well, I mean, the Maglia Rossa at least. But yeah, what a ride. What a ride. He's 22 years old. We talked about the fact that he wasn't meant to be the leader on this race. And just, I mean, to have the strength and mainly the mental strength to keep your head into the game, into the Giro, when you've been wearing the jersey for 15 days, that your teammate basically gave up on you, and to come back and be like, okay, I'm still in this, I can still get Pello Bilbao, who we had seen on the Stelvio was miles ahead of Joao. What a ride. What a ride by Joao, and you can't fault him for anything. He hasn't done anything wrong. He played smartly. He went for the bonus seconds. I think at one point he's gone like 20 seconds of bonus seconds or something like that. Even like the smallest gaps he could take, he was going for it. I think it was stage 16, the stage that Jan Tratnik wins, and the day before you had seen Joe maybe being a bit iffy. You didn't know if he had the legs, and he just proved everyone wrong, sprinting away and dropping Wilco Kelderman for like 4 or 5 seconds, which at the time on big gaps. But when you think that both Jay and Tay were in the same time after 20 stages, that's the kind of gaps that are important. And the 20 seconds of bonus seconds he's taken during this Giro allow him to be in 4th place ahead of the rider you were backing, Pello Bilbao.
Yeah. What a race by Joao Almeida. Got to back up your points there. Just incredible. 22. Obviously, he expected to come to this race in support of Evenepoel. That didn't happen, as we know, due to Evenepoel's crash. But Almeida has proved he is more than capable of leading a Grand Tour, and just the pedigree of rider he is as well. I think it's a shame he didn't take home a stage win he came close on many occasions. Looking at his time trials alone, he came second in the first one, sixth in the second time trial, and then fourth today. Just an incredible time trialist, let alone his other abilities. He was in the top 3, top 5 on multiple other occasions. I think it was the sprint on stage 13 where he lost to Ulysses. That was his closest kind of chance to a stage win. And I think having the Maglia Racer for so long perhaps held him back from taking a stage win, because obviously everyone's looking at him. He can't escape. He can't go in breakaways. He can't try more attacks without everyone trying to follow. But Almeida, I cannot wait to see what he does next year, particularly in monuments as well. Il Lombardia, even Liège, they could suit him really well too. He is such a good talent.
I mean, yeah, he's won Liège-Bastogne-Liège as an under 23. We talked about the fact that he probably enjoys steeper and shorter climbs more than climbs such as the Stelvio, which is why Lombardia looks like a definite, like it looks like it's his race. And yeah, I mean, he's 22. I'm very eager to see more of him. I don't know how he's going to fit into the Deceuninck lineup. Kind of like Tao. I mean, no, to be fair, Deceuninck is less GC axed, but you've got Evenepoel. You have, I mean, Julien said he was focusing on the Tour de France for next year. So that's a car that's done already. Remco most likely will go for potentially Giro or Vuelta, which could leave Joao leading at least one Grand Tour next year for Deceuninck. And in an era where all the winners are young, I think he definitely has his card. And he's so good in time trial that he can afford to be a bit under when it comes to the mountain category.
Yeah, and he's obviously a very good sprinter as well for the GC guys. He can take these bonus seconds where others maybe can't.
Yeah, he's got some speed, which is nice. I mean, I was looking at his results. You said that it was a shame he couldn't take a stage win, and it is. But I mean, he finished, like, I think the stage that Ghana wins, stage 5, he finishes second of the bunch sprint. The stages where Pete Sagan wins, his 90, like, I think he finishes first of the bunch sprint, if I'm correct. He's second of the sprints where Ulysses wins. He's always there or thereabout. He has the pace. He just needs maybe a bit more experience. I mean, he's still young. Sometimes it shows that he makes a few mistakes. For example, on the Stelvio, he completely blew up. Had he been maybe a bit more regular during the climb, he would have been able to limit the damage. But when you look back at the GC now, it probably wouldn't have changed anything. But yeah, Joe is definitely a one to watch. We talked about Jay and Tao being the revelations of this race. I'd have Joao ahead of them too.
Yeah, I think that's fair, particularly as he's a few years younger even. And I think it's his first year in World Tour as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's just come up last year from Hagen's.
Yeah, he was in Hagens, yeah.
Oh, this guy. Cannot wait to see what he can do. Finally, I do want to touch on the 5th place of the GC, Peo Bilbao. He finished in the end just over 3 minutes down on Geoghegan Hart. This is a man who rode the Tour de France in support of Mikel Landa. Really, really strong rider in the Tour. He came 20th in the World Championships. He won the Spanish individual time trial, and these are all after lockdown. He's then come to the Giro and really challenged for the GC. Didn't quite push on after that really good performance on the Stelvio in the final few days of the race. But boy, this guy, he's had a good season, hasn't he?
He's had a wonderful year. He's been, I mean, like when he rode Burgos, I think that was no, actually that was after lockdown. But he had, oh, sorry, Algarve. He was already in shape in February. Then lockdown happened, season restarted, and he was still in shape. And he's been in shape since like July. That's like a 3-month peak. That's a long peak, especially when you consider he's ridden, as you said, the Tour de France. I mean, just what a season for Peyo. And I'm completely butcher. I was looking at Almeida. He did not ride the Algarve. He rode Andalusia, which I was confused. But I mean, what a season! What a season from Peyo. Just, it's a shame he couldn't be there on Sestriere. I think he lost about 30 seconds to Joao. I think the legs probably were a bit heavy after that season. But I mean, he rode for Mikel and then he tried to ride for himself. He finishes 5th of the Giro. That's his second. I think no, actually that's his best ever GC result. I think he had finished sixth in
Yeah.
2018. So it's nice. I mean, he's 30 years old. He's not the youngest, um, but it's very nice to see him there. I would have liked to see him finish fourth place. I would have loved to see him on the podium actually. Um, uh, but yeah, it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, it would be nice to see him on a Grand Tour podium, and he's really shows he can lead these Grand Tours. Perhaps not the Tour de France. I think Landa's still probably above him in the pecking order at Bahrain McLaren, but I'm sure he'll get the chance to lead either the Giro or the Vuelta next season. And yeah, you mentioned Vuelta a Burgos, which started end of July. It's now the end of October. He's hardly had any race days off in that time. He's had a few weeks between the Tour and the Giro, where he went to Italy and rode the World Champs. But apart from that, he's really just been riding pretty much week in, week out, and to still be in, you know, as good form as he is at this stage of the Giro really is testament to him. I think he's a very good time trialist, as we know, winning the Spanish time trial earlier this year. His kind of tiredness perhaps shows in the two time trials in the second and third weeks. I think he's a better time trialist than he shows in those time trials, and that is just probably because he's knackered. He must be so tired from all these race days. So yeah, looking forward to see what he can do next year.
Yeah, I mean, I was doing some rapid mathematics, so I might be slightly wrong, but I think he's had 29 or 30 days off the bike since the restart, or since the
Yeah,
Vuelta a Burgos. That's been 3 months. 3 months, it's like 90 days. He spent two-thirds of the lockdown racing, well, of this post-lockdown on the bike. It's absolutely mental. And yeah, he's by far a better time trialist than his results on the Giro shows. I mean, he lost 3 minutes on Ghana on the stage 14, where I think was a time trial that genuinely suited him. It's like average distance with a few hills along the way, some elevation. I think Peyo could have, like, I mean, he lost minutes. I think he could have lost 130 finish around Joao Almeida had he been in a better condition. Um, but I mean, despite the heavy legs, he still did very well later on in the Giro with the Stelvio. I mean, he still finishes seventh in Sestriere, and I'm like saying that he could have done better. I'm being very ambitious with Peyo, but no, he's ridden a great year. He deserves a long rest, and I think we'll see him most likely in February when the Spanish classics come back, should they be in February. But yeah, amazing year, and what a season by Peyo to finish with a high note of fifth on the Giro d'Italia.
yeah, couldn't agree more. So let's move on. I'm going to ask you, what was your favourite stage of the race? Put you straight under the spotlight. What was your favourite stage?
I mean, I'm wrong if I say this. I can't be more wrong if I say the Stelvio. The Stelvio stage was just everyone should have had that at their favorite stage. It was so good.
It was a pretty special stage. I'm gonna throw another one in the mix. I'll suggest stage 10, which was won by Peter Sagan solo into Tortoretto, which didn't turn out to be a massive GC day. I think Fulsang lost a bit of time after a mechanical, but I love that stage. If we put the Stelvio aside, which we know was just incredible, even Sestriere as well, that was an incredible stage too. I'd suggest stage 10 was perhaps my favourite, seeing Sagan finally get his first win this year and his Grand Tour win. And I think he was, in the process of that win, he became the 100th rider to win a stage at all three Grand Tours, which was quite nice too.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. I was trying to think of another stage, but I mean that stage that Peter won. I don't know if it's the 100th. It's either 100 or 99th. I can't remember. But either way, he came on the Giro with one thing in his mind, which was to get a stage win, especially in a season where he hasn't been. Let's be honest, he hasn't been the luckiest. He hasn't been the greatest. It's not the Pete Sagan we've all come to know and love. But he's a champion, and he proved that again this year. Came on the Giro, won IGN head, and he delivered. He delivered. I don't think it was as good of a Giro as he probably would have wanted to. I think he probably would have liked to be Demar on at least one stage. There was one stage where he came quite close to a win. But Bora taking the same tactics they've had on the Tour de France to try and defeat Sam Bennett. I mean, they couldn't in France. He could beat Demar at least once in Italy, and it's nice. He deserved that win.
He definitely did. And people are talking about his sprinting legs have gone. He obviously hasn't been able to beat Bennett, Ewan, and now Demar at the Giro, but he's always been there or thereabouts, second, third, consistently just behind those guys. He's still a very good sprinter, just not perhaps quite there with Demar. There was that stage as well where it was so close between Sagan, Demar, and I think Ballerini as well. He's still quick, and it was nice to see him just kind of tear up the tactic book, I guess, and just try and kind of ride it like a classic, I guess. That stage 10, he wasn't going to settle for any kind of sprint. He just went full gas solo, and held it to the line. I really enjoyed that stage.
Yeah, I mean, you talked about him being not as good as like a Caleb Ewan or Sam Bennett or here another Neymar. I think that's true. I think he probably lost a bit of explosivity when it comes to the sprint, but he's still an absolute monster on the bike, and he can make a stage tough for everyone. For example, like stage 10, had it not been, I think he was in the breakaway with like Filippo Ganna. Ganna obviously was riding for I think Ben Swift, if I'm correct, but if they hadn't made the race difficult, I do believe that Arno could have gone and been the first group. We had seen that Arno had some amazing legs. I mean, it's a bit off topic, but in my opinion, Arno is the best sprinter of 2020. Like he has been just too good, and I think that parkour, had it not been for a high rhythm from Bora and the breakaway, and mainly Peter Sagan, I think Arno could have been there to win it. So sure, Sagan might not have the legs he used to have, but his cycling IQ is still well on par with the best, and yeah, it's very nice to see him win.
Definitely. So I'm going to bring back to that point about Zamar. He won 4 stages at this year's Giro, and I'd love to see him go up against Bennett and Ewan next year, because those 3 guys for me are kind of a cut above the rest, if you will. Bennett and Caleb Ewan were great at the Tour. Tamar has just been dominant in the sprints at this year's race. He could have probably had 5 stage wins as well. I think stage 19, they just let the breakaway go because it would have secured the Chiclamino jersey. But yeah, it's very close. I'm not sure I would say Damar is out and out the best. It's so close. He's obviously been so dominant in everything he's done this year. Sam Bennett and Caleb Ewan for me are right there with him. It's those 3 who I would put at the top right now.
I mean, Bennett and Ewan would by far be faster, in my opinion, but Arno is more complete, I guess. I would have loved to see Arno on that Tour de France. Genuinely, I would have loved to see him here. But it was nice to see him on the Giro. After last year's, I think it was last year's disappointment, where he basically had the Ciclamino and they bottled it big times. I mean, it was just so French to bottle something where, I mean, I was so sad because for those who don't remember, I think it was around stage 18, 19. Demar had, I mean, he was got, he had the jersey, and FDG decided to chase down the breakaway to allow Pascal Ackermann to finish second, and Demar finished like fifth or sixth, and they lost the jersey to that. It was so stupid, and I think that's also why they probably let the breakaway go on that stage 19. They was like, no, okay, we're not taking any risk. Go, break away. We're not gonna chase you. But yeah, no, Arno 4 stage wins on sprint terrains, also on the hilly terrains. I think it's stage 6. Or yeah, it is stage 6 where he wins the sprint on quite some elevation after beats. I mean, he's ahead of the sprinters like Matthews. I think Fellini is third. Pete Sagan is 8th. But it was not the flattest of terrains, and the stage as well had been quite complicated. There was quite a few climbs along the way. But yeah, Arnaud definitely showing that this year was one of his best seasons. He's obviously the French champion, beating Alaphilippe in a hilly sprint. I mean, not everyone can do that. I think he's won. Was it? I think he's won the Tour de Wallonie ahead as well, maybe ahead of like Van Avermaet. So he's had some amazing legs, and I don't know if we'll see him next year on the Tour de France because I mean FDG is focused around Thibaut. but with back-to-back disappointments from Thibaut on the tour, maybe, just maybe, Arnaud will have his chance to get the green jersey. I can't remember the last time we've had a green or a French green jersey on the Champs-Élysées. But should we have one guy, I think Arnaud is the only French rider able to get the green, with maybe Julien.
Yeah, Julian potentially as well, depending on the parkour, I guess. But yeah, I agree with you. Tamar probably more versatile than the two other guys I mentioned. That for sure I'd agree with. So the Giro's done. The Giro's complete. We have one more Grand Tour to look at later in the year, of course. Well, of course it's underway, but we're yet to see how that will unfold. We had a crazy stage today, stage 6. I won't spoil that for you. We're not going to touch on that too much today. I think, will we be discussing the Vuelta at a later date?
I mean, I'm all up for it.
Brilliant. So you guys can look forward to that. We'll not touch on the Vuelta just yet, but Tao Geoghegan Hart has won the Giro d'Italia, the second British winner of the race after Froome just a few years ago. And just an incredible race. So much excitement, so much unknown, really. No one knew who would win this race. And really, in the end, it was a battle between two guys no one could have expected.
I mean, yeah. And the one thing that still mind-boggled me, I mean, Great Britain has won like 9 or 10 Grand Tours since 2011 with 5 different riders when there isn't a single climb in Great Britain. How are you doing this? It's mad. It's mad.
It's a good question. It's a very good question.
But yeah, big shout out to Tao Geoghegan Hart winning the Giro. He was not a favorite. He was like 3.5 minutes down on the GC after came stage 4, but what a ride. What a ride indeed.
So I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast today. Blackwar, I'll leave the final word with you.
I think we may have another Great Britain story on the Vuelta.
Cheers guys, catch you next time.